Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today to chat about the Createability Internship program. My name is Morwenna Collett and I'm hosting the webinar today. I'm the Diversity and Inclusion Manager at Create New South Wales and I'm project managing this really exciting new program. I've got 4 speakers with me today and I'll be introducing them to you shortly. But a couple of housekeeping things to let you know about first. If you're joining us live for this webinar today, if you click on up the top of the screen, there's a little arrow function here, which is View Active Cameras. And if you click on that, you'll just see our presenters appearing at the top of your screen. Now, if you need captioning, in the chat box on the right of my screen, I've popped a link in there for you to be able to access the captioning today. Unfortunately, our overlaying is not working over the top of the PowerPoint, so it'd be a situation where you'd need to open another window, click on that link and access the captioning that way. Right, so to sort of continue with a bit of housekeeping, the webinar today is being recorded and we're going to pop the recording up on the Create New South Wales website afterwards for anyone else who wasn't able to join us today to have a look at, or if anyone wants to go back and revisit any of the conversation afterwards. I think we've all done this correctly so far, but just a reminder to keep your mics on mute when you're not speaking, and also anyone who's not presenting, if you could have your cameras off during the presentation, that'll help keep focus on our presenters today. And we do have the chat box happening on the right-hand side of my screen, so you can feel free to pop any questions into that as we go through the webinar today, and we'll certainly make sure that there's time for questions and answers at the end. So if you've just joined us, if I can ask you just to turn your camera off if you're not a presenter, that would be great. Okay. So to begin, I'd like to properly start this session now by acknowledging that we're all gathered here today on traditional lands. I'm joining us today from Gadigal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. And of course, this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today, we are going to be chatting about the recently announced very exciting Createability Internship program. So Create New South Wales actually ran a pilot program of this initiative back in 2018, and really pleased to let you know that they've committed to running this again for the next 3 years, starting in 2022. It's a wonderful program that's had a big impact on the individual interns that have been through the program and also the host organisations that were involved in that pilot. So it's great that it's back, and the overall aim of it really is about improving employment opportunities for people with disability across our arts, culture and screen sectors over the next few years and of course beyond as well. And it's wonderful to see that this time we've extended the initiative outside of Sydney. So we've got a number of regional partner organisations joining us for the program for the first time as well. So if I can have the next slide, please. Today, you're going to be hearing a little bit from me with some sort of preamble about what this initiative is. And then we're going to get into a conversation with a couple of representatives from organisations that were involved in that pilot program back in 2018. So it's my real pleasure to be joined today by Libbie Doherty, who's Head of Children's Content at ABC, by Janelle Ryan, who's Accessibility Operations at the Sydney Opera House, and by Tooher, who's the Executive Director of the Sydney Festival. And we also have Liz Martin, who is the Interim CEO at Accessible Arts, which was a partner organisation on the program back in 2018 and will absolutely remain a really important partner organisation for this program going forward. So, to introduce the program to you briefly, and I know some of you might have already had a quick look at the guidelines which came out last week. It's essentially a partnership between Create New South Wales and Accessible Arts, and then a range of different New South Wales-based arts, screen and cultural organisations. And the idea or the premise behind the initiative is to provide some training for 10 participants with disability and or who are deaf, followed by some paid internships in major New South Wales organisations across those 3 different sectors. Now, the internships are going to be tailored to intern interests, and they're going to cover a variety of different creative and also technical areas in the screen, arts and culture sectors. So these might include things like marketing, curation, production, front of house, arts administration, public programs, art departments, camera and sound, writing, producing, animation, visual effects, editing, and really the list really goes on. So the guidelines, as I mentioned, are available on the Create New South Wales website, and if we haven't already, we might pop a link to those guidelines into the chat, and absolutely encourage you to sort of dive into those for more detail. The guidelines are available now, and the program itself will be open for application using our Smarty Grants portal from Monday the 20th of September. So you've got a little bit of time to digest the guidelines before you have to start worrying about writing an application. On the next slide here, really pleased to show that we've got a really comprehensive list of potential partner host organisations that interns can choose to work with. So on the arts side of things, we have Arts Out West, Marigong Theatre, Musica Viva. First time we've had a music organisation in the program, so as a musician I'm very excited about that. Arana Arts, Performance Space, great to have Sydney Festival back and the Opera House back, and Sydney Theatre Company. Now on the screen side of things, we've got Animal Logic, Fremantle Media, Industrial Light and Magic, Jungle Entertainment, Netflix for the first time, SBS and Screenworks. Plus, you're also able to apply to have an internship with Create New South Wales ourselves, if that's something that you would like. And you've also, for the first time, got the option to choose a completely different organisation altogether. If there's an organisation that you'd love to work with and you've had a chat to them about this program and they're happy to be involved, we're really happy to receive an application from you to work with a different organisation. So the thinking in pulling this list of organisations together is that we wanted to give people a real choice of the types of different organisations that they could have their intern experience with. So now we'll get on to the most exciting part of today's discussion, which is hearing from each of our host and partner organisations who were involved last time, and of course some of which will be involved again this time around as well. So what we're going to do is I might start with Janelle, Chris and Libbie, and really keen to hear from each of you a bit about what your experience back in 2018 was like, who you worked with, what the intern got out of it, what you got out of it, and anything else that you want to share with us. And then we'll sort of deep dive into some more questions and recommendations for host orgs and interns this time around. But we might start with you, Janelle, if you want to kick us off.
Hello. I'd also just want to start by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation also, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So I was part of the Sydney Opera House was part of the 2018 internship, and we had an intern by the name of Dan Graham. Dan is a professionally trained theatre director, and he's also an advocate for disability arts or deaf arts as well. What we did with Dan in terms of the internship, we had 2 distinct sections. So for the first half of his internship, we focused on customer service skills, and we embedded him within our high-level customer service concierge team called the Welcome Team. And that was all about transferable skills that he could take away from the internship in terms of customer service and front of house roles. And then the second half, he was embedded with our Sydney Opera House Presents team. and that was our Kids and Families producers. And he had an opportunity to engage with all the producers across the team and to look at how the organisation produces and what the business of it is. And then at the end, he presented to everybody about arts organisations or artists that we might engage with in future in the disability arts scene. So that was kind of what he did. And the experience of working together was fantastic. It was a learning curve at times, but I think with any intern or any person coming into a role, you have to think about how best to work together. That's just how it is. You find out what works best. And I think what was so wonderful working with Dan was that all the changes we made were promoting and changing the physical environment, and even culturally just increased being inclusive. So I think as a whole, the program was really beneficial to our organisation.
Thanks so much, Janelle. And knowing Dan Graham, as I know a number of us do, I know how highly he valued that experience at the Opera House and working together. And I know you've had a relationship since as well. So it's great to see those sorts of things kind of starting as the kernel of an idea through an internship, and then sort of a longer term relationship really growing and flourishing as well. So thank you. Libbie, shall we come to you next and tell us a little bit about your experience at ABC?
Hi everyone, thank you. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which I'm dialing in from, which is the Yuin country on the far south coast, which is beautiful, beautiful land, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and especially those working in the creative arts, of which we're all involved in. So thank you. We had the great pleasure in ABC Children's to have Joel Pragnell, who you saw on the opening screen, come and work with us in the children's department of the ABC. We're responsible for all of the in-house production, including Play School at the time, Wonder Gang, and a range of other productions that he was exposed to. So it was a really fantastic kind of meeting of the minds with Joel. He was very interested in working on our post-production team and in our editing pipeline. So he sort of started off there just to get a sense of on the Wonder Gang, to get a sense of what his skills were, what he might need. So it was a very gentle process and very much led by him as well, talking to us about his needs, us responding very carefully as to how we could accommodate those. So yeah, there was a bit of practical and cultural change that kind of came along with that. And then I guess in terms of his development, was just acknowledging as well that as an editor, it's often quite good to be aware of the front end of the process. So over time, he spent some time with the Play School team and went out on what we call Windows film, which you've probably all seen in Play School, and he got to go out on the shoot and work with the children, see the directors working with the children who were being directed, and then manage to edit those films together. So managed to sort of see the pipeline from beginning to end. So I think that was also a really useful thing for Joel for his learning, to see, the process from beginning to end. And then of course, working at the ABC is really complicated because there's many, many departments who are involved in many things. So Joel also had to intersect with some of our delivery and editing and post-production teams in other areas. So that was some great learning for him as well. So yeah, when it became obvious to us after the internship had finished that we were actually looking for someone to work in our post team, Joel was on the top of our list to invite back to work on a number of productions with us. So yeah, we have a lovely ongoing relationship with him now, which we wouldn't have had if we hadn't been part of this program and got to know him in a really excellent manner. Personally for me, he and I for some reason seemed to have the same day clock when we were in it at Ultimo. We used to go and have a coffee break kind of at the same time. So I also had a lot of moments where he and I would bump into each other at the lift and have a bit of a chin wag. And I think it was just, he just was a really great person to have as part of our team, generally, and mixed really beautifully with everybody across the department and across the building. So yeah, I can only speak highly enough of opening up your department for one of these internships and welcoming people in. And I think, yeah, there's a symbiotic relationship that happens between both participants, the host organisation as well as the intern.
Thanks so much, Libbie, and it's been great also to see Joel develop and flourish through this time. And I know organisations such as Accessible Arts have certainly benefited from his skill set and things that he developed at ABC and in other places. So it's great to see him in demand across our sector, sort of post this internship as well. And for anyone who might be interested, we've just popped a link in the chat to an interview with Joel, so you can have a look and hear from Joel. And Joel will actually be joining us for our second webinar about createability in a couple of weeks' time to sort of hear from the intern side of things, his experience. But that's great, Libbie. And you know, while ABC is not specifically listed as a host organisation this year, we know that we'll be engaging with you through this program in the future again for sure. So yeah, really great to hear about that experience. And you know, it's a little bit of a rarity, I guess, to have a program that works equally well for both the arts and screen sectors. And this one, you know, is absolutely sitting across both. And I think that's a real strength. And you know, sometimes we get siloed in our own little art form or screen areas, and it's great to see this as a program that really cuts across all of our different sectors. So thank you. And we might move over to Chris now to hear a little bit about Sydney Festival's experience.
Thanks, Morwenna. And I too on Gadigal land this morning, beautiful Gadigal land, with a little bit of rain coming down, which we need. This program came along at a really opportune time for the festival. The festival had a long time commitment to accessibility, and the organisation had been heavily focused on audiences as part of that strategy. And it was pointed out to us by our external advisory committee and our colleagues at Accessible Arts that there's, you know, other areas to look at, and accessibility pathways into the organisation for employment, be it for artists, technicians or administration, where areas we hadn't really focused on. So it came at a real opportune time. We thought, actually, what are we doing in that space? And so the internship was a perfect opportunity. The festival brings on seasonal staff each year, as many people probably know. We grow from a small team of 20 odd up to, you know, more than 100 people running around the office, which causes mayhem, and I never remember anyone's name, but that's another story. But it's great. You bring in all these seasonal staff with a whole range of skills and expertise and experience, and it's actually a really fun time for the organisation. So we thought with this internship it'd be a great way to see where we could find a fit within some of those seasonal roles, and again establish those sort of pathways into the organisation that would be recurring. And so we were lucky to be teamed up with Thomas Hamilton, who joined us on the internship program, and it was a very much the role that we established in that first year was a general admin role. It was a administration office support, so working at reception, working with customer inquiries, and helping office administration right across the full organisation. Thomas fitted into that role extremely well, and the organisation benefited from having its eyes opened up to accessibility being something that is just part of what we do, not a specific chore for a specific person within the organisation, which is something we've always tried to do, is embed the idea of always thinking about accessibility in everything we do, and having someone with lived experience within the organisation certainly helps embed that, and so that the organisation got an awful lot out of it. So much so, Thomas's passion for performing arts was evident. I think that's the reason he probably nominated us as someone to team up with. And so we thought it was great that the internship, but we immediately thought, you know, what are the ongoing opportunities there? And we're really pleased that Thomas joined us again in the next year as part of that seasonal staff to join our box office team, because he had he really enjoyed in that first year the experiences of working with customers on the phone, and we thought that could translate well into box office. So we got him as part of the seasonal box office team that we bring in each year and trained him up in our box office system. And he had a great time working as part of that seasonal team, but that our box office is one of those roles that doesn't go on. We bring a whole team in and then we don't have much work for them once the festival's over. So he departed. Well, he didn't in the end depart. He was due to depart. And we did have an opening within the organisation for our administration officer, and some conversations were had, and Thomas took on that full-time role. So he's still with us now and still performing in that duty, and is a great asset and colleague as part of the organisation.
Thanks, Chris. And we always enjoy, back when we were sharing an office together at the Arts Exchange, it was always nice to pop up to level 5 and see Thomas, say hello to Thomas at the front desk. And what a great experience in terms of getting to work across a number of different areas of the organisation, and of course end up in a full-time role with the organisation he originally interned in. So such a fantastic success story there on all fronts. Liz, let's come to you and Accessible Arts. So Accessible Arts has obviously been a really important partner helping us work through the delivery of this program in the past and into the future as well. So I wondered if you could chat a little bit about how Accessible Arts was involved last time, and then perhaps any reflections you might have on, what's changed in the sector since.
Hello, everybody. Lovely to meet with you all this morning. I'd like to acknowledge I'm also on Gadigal land and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would say if I was a wee bit younger, this is a program I would love to do. This is a super exciting opportunity, and I encourage you all to throw your hat in the ring. It's a great way to connect in with organisations, and it's also a great way to connect with accessible arts and with other artists and arts practitioners with disability. The Accessible Arts, I don't know if you may not have all heard of us, but we're the peak arts and disability organisation for New South Wales. And we advance the rights of and opportunities for people with disability and or who are deaf to develop and sustain professional careers in the arts. With the last Createability, we got to meet all the lovely interns and did some professional development sort of preparation employment training so that people were all up to speed and ready to go once they arrived at their placement. And we also did a lot of training with the organisations as well to ensure that they were across access and inclusion and were ready for all the interns to arrive. The conversations that came out of both of those trainings were beautiful, and this process really enables a really deep understanding and connection between the interns and the organisations, and really provides a great opportunity for both sides of the coin to really flourish and learn out of these experiences. For some of the interns, Morwenna mentioned Joel, but actually quite a few interns are very connected with Accessible Arts too now. We've got a few trainers who are interns. We have a couple of advisors, and of course we have Joel who edits all our videos and so on. So secretly for us, it's wonderful to connect with new people and to meet you. And so that connection, I can't emphasize that enough. I think sometimes as artists with disability or practitioners with disability, it can be an isolating space, but there's actually a heap of us out there, and this is a wonderful way for you to connect with your peers as well as other organisations and have real employment experience. They're the main points I think that I wanted to raise, but I really do encourage you all to apply, and also to connect with Accessible Arts. Feel free to reach out, jump online, send us an email, tell us who you are. We'd love to meet you, and best of luck with your applications.
Thanks, Liz. And I think some great proof in the pudding there that, you know, one of the things this internship has done has provided employment opportunities, not just with the organisation you interned with, but further afield. And as you say, a number of us accessible arts trainers sort of came through that internship program and have that ongoing relationship as well, which is fantastic. So I'm aware that today online and also potentially afterwards via the recording, a number of our new host organisations might be joining to have a listen in. So Chris, Janelle, Libbie, what tips or advice might you give to newbie host organisations who might be embarking on this program for the first time this year?
I'm happy to start that conversation. I think similar to what Libbie was talking about with the ABC, my biggest tip is at the very beginning, once an intern is chosen, to really have that back and forth, really detailed conversation about what your intern might need to for best support, so that they've got everything they need. For the Sydney Opera House with Dan, we sat down and we actually ended up delaying the start of his internship so that we could access something called the Employee Assistance Fund, or the EAF. And that allowed us to assist Dan to apply for some adaptive systems and even training in those systems. So I really think that critical initial discussion is really important, because we were able to set Dan up over a period of a few weeks with some really helpful technology that he hadn't engaged with before for the internship.
Awesome. And again, having access to that Employment Assistance Fund, that's something that Create New South Wales can help support host organisations through that process, and absolutely that's something there that is there to be used. So, so great to bring that up. Thanks, Janelle. Chris, Libbie, any thoughts from you?
I'll just jump in. I would add, preparedness of the team even before you're engaging with the intern, I think is a really good first step as well, if it is the first time your organisation is welcoming someone into your team. So that certainly, you know, if it's with Accessible Arts, you know, some kind of training or support for the staff before, so they can be thinking ahead as well about what might need to change. But then, of course, that critical conversation with the person involved. And I think probably having a range of opportunities for the person to explore and to develop, and getting their input into what that might be. So you might offer 3 or 4 and they might select 1 or 2, or you know, they might come up with ideas that you haven't thought about. So I think just being very open to their input and making sure that the internship is something that they're going to get something out of as well. Like obviously, as I said, you know, we got a lot out of it on our end as well, but I think that was in a very like practical sense. Like often some of the younger team members who hadn't come up, who hadn't experienced the lived experience, also got a lot out of it as well. So it really was quite far-reaching, the benefits for everyone. But I think, preparedness and a very open and transparent conversation, and making sure the intern has an advocate or a support person that they can go to if things aren't going well, or if there's any things they want to flag or bring up, and that's in a very safe environment for them to do, is also probably a critical piece as well.
Thanks, Libbie. And one of the great things we're doing again is providing disability confidence training to all the host organisations via Accessible Arts, which is fantastic. And yeah, Create New South Wales is also going to play a more hands-on role this time in terms of that nurturing and supporting and mentoring both interns and host organisations through this. So yeah, some great tips there. Chris, what about thoughts from you?
Yeah, just to confirm with my colleagues there, and maybe to add, not to underestimate the unconscious bias that does exist within organisations, and do your absolute best to try and recognise it. It's not unconscious if you recognise it, of course, but it's there and it's real. And to ensure, for me, for any internship, we have interns across all sorts of sectors and different areas, but it's got to be real. So the job that they come into has to be meaningful, has to be real, has to give the person access to something where they can see the results of what they're doing. They're not just there, hanging on the side. So as much as you possibly can to embed it. That's why we focused around making it an actual role that we would normally have a person in, and that's where we always try and focus internships. You get into employment law there, you've got to be careful that you're not replacing paid positions. But this is a paid position, so there's no problem there.
And one of the great things about, I think, the internships last time is, not seeing the interns from this program end up all in access or disability related roles, that they worked across the whole breadth of organisations. And in the guidelines this time, if you haven't had a look already, we've got some quite detailed information about the internships being offered. We've asked organisations to be quite specific about what they're looking for and what they're thinking of, but still absolutely with a degree of flexibility to be able to tailor that to intern needs in some instances as well. So a question for you all before we sort of talk through a few more of the nuts and bolts and take some Q&As from the audience. But we've talked a little bit about, tips for host organisations, but other than go forth and apply, any advice or reflections for potential interns that you'd like to sort of throw into the conversation?
I go back to, again, just is to absolutely follow the passion. So if I always say, for anyone, again, coming into the organisation, we don't pay enough and there's too much work to be doing it for anything other than passion. So join us if you're passionate about what we do, and you'll find a pathway. And as much as people are able, going back to that unconscious bias, call us out, bring it to our attention. Don't be afraid to have the discussions, because quite often it is just that unconscious, not intentional. And that's an important part of having these roles within the organisation, to make us aware of it.
Yeah, I would back that up and just be open in those initial discussions. The whole point of the internship is to have those open conversations and to work your way through any barriers or challenges. So it's just about be absolutely open, and that, we're all working on this together to get to the same point.
And you'll see in the application form for interns that we do ask information about access requirements that you have, and the reason that we do that is we really want to do our absolute best to be able to support those and make sure that we have an honest conversation about those up front, and that everyone's aware of what that means, so that an intern can be fully supported and set up to succeed in an organisation. So that's great. Libbie or Liz, any final thoughts before we move on? Libbie?
One thing I always feel like it's really important to say to interns, because they're often on the beginning of their career journey, is that there is no actual pathway in the arts. It's a crazy old business. My journey is different to every other journeys of the people in my team. So part of the journey might be that you maybe come to the ABC and go, I don't really like that, which is also okay and a good part of the learning. So yeah, every little piece will just add up to the collective knowledge that you gather over time. So yeah, as much as you can, enjoy the craft skill building time of your career. Don't rush up into management. Enjoy it and embrace some of the, the learnings that you're going to have as first and as you enter into any of these industries.
I totally agree with that, Libbie. It's such a wiggly line, isn't it, working in the arts? And here's an amazing experience for you to add into the whole range of experiences you're going to have. And I think you're probably getting a really good sense of the variety of internships that happened last time, and I'm sure will happen again. It's definitely not a one size fits all. So think very clearly about what you want to get out of this opportunity, and talk to that when you have the interview, and also think about your access requirements. It can be a strange kind of space to think about, like. For example, for me, lockdown's been wonderful because I've realized I actually have all these requirements that I've always pushed through. Like, I probably need to rest more often than most people, or sometimes I need to sit on the couch and work with my feet up. So have a think about what kind of environment works for you. And that can be an access requirement. Hey, it's not all ramps and wheelchairs. It's about how long your day is, your energy levels, and all that sort of stuff. So really think about that and bring that to the conversation as well. And yeah, good luck. Have fun with it.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, I just wanted to add, sorry, that the Opera House's internship this year is in a completely different area with a completely different energy this year. So I second that it's really important that you look at all those opportunities and see the one that best suits.
Yeah, they're incredibly varied and all kind of detailed in the guidelines. Let's move on and talk some nuts and bolts, and then we're going to take some questions because I know we've had a few come through already in advance. So this is all in the guidelines, but just to, I guess, reiterate Liz's point, these internships are really flexible in what they end up looking like. In terms of dollars we've got to pay you in terms of hours worked, each internship can be up to 120 hours. Now that might look like 3 intense full-time weeks over something like a festival period. It might look more like a day a week over 16 weeks. It could be any combination or anything in between as well. So, really flexible with what that looks like. We're looking for most or all of the internships to be done sort of primarily in the first half of next year. We'll have another round of Createability happening again next year for sort of things beyond July. Yeah, just to reiterate that point around access requirements being supported, and that's why you will see questions in the application form around that, because we're here to support them, but we need to understand what they are to make sure you end up being matched with the right organisation. So that is good. And I want to just talk through on the next slide a couple of the sort of key dates coming up. So guidelines available now, and absolutely, go and have a look at those, dive in. We've got a couple of different versions of those on the website. We're having a second webinar in a couple of weeks' time, and that will be very much this is how you apply for the program, taking you through the questions. And with that webinar, we'll also have 2 previous interns from 2018 joining us for a conversation as well. Applications are closing on the 18th of October, so you've got sort of 5-6 weeks to apply. We're looking to hold interviews with the host organisations and their potential interns and Create New South Wales together in mid-November. So there's some sort of dates to keep free in your diary. Looking to make announcements of our final 10 recipients and host organisations in early December. We're no rest for the wicked. We're going to train all the interns up on the 13th of December, so that's another date for the diary, and then those internships can take place from then any time onwards. So that's some of the nuts and bolts. Now, I've had a number of questions sort of sent through in advance via registration, and while I work through these, please feel free to add any questions into the chat and we'll address those now. So one question I've had is there an age limit for this program? And is it suitable for someone who might have developed a disability and had to change direction in their life in their late 30s or 40s, but have keen interest and talent in working in the arts? The good news is there's absolutely no age limit for this program, and we understand that people have career changes. Lots of us have multiple different careers, sometimes in different sectors across our lifetime, so no upper age limit at all. Anyone can apply. The next question I have here is around, will this opportunity be available all across New South Wales? And the good news is that yes, anyone from New South Wales can apply, and you can apply to work in an arts, cultural screen organisation anywhere in New South Wales. Now, as I mentioned, we've got a couple of regional organisations in the list already. So Screenworks, who are up in Ballina, Arts Out West, Arana Arts and Merigong are all regionally based organisations kind of on our list. And as I said before, you can also choose your own organisation. So if you are, in Bathurst or somewhere and you've got an organisation you really want to work with and you've had a chat to them, that's absolutely okay too. On that question, we do have sort of a follow-up question around, is there any system in place to reach that destination? Do we have to make our own way, or is there a support system? Unfortunately, as much as we'd wish there was, a huge travel and accommodation budget available in this program, there isn't. So we've only got available the salaries for the interns, not any travel or accommodation. So it probably makes sense to apply for an organisation that is somewhere in the area in which you live. I'm filled with optimism that these internships will be able to take place in person in some shape or form next year. But of course, a lot of organisations do have remote working arrangements, or pretty much all, I imagine, by now too. So there might be some flexibility around sort of that as well. I've had a question about what organisations are involved in the program and what roles. So they're all listed in the guidelines. There are a number of organisations that were involved in the pilot program, such as the Art Gallery of New South Wales and MCA, that aren't in our potential partner list organisations this time. That doesn't mean that you can't approach them yourself if you've got a relationship there and there's someone that you like to work with. But what we wanted to do was have a mix of old and new, so that we get some fresh blood and fresh organisations in the mix, as well as some who have been through the program before. I've also had a question around sort of definition of disability, and a couple of people checking in with me with, I've got this condition, am I eligible? We're using the definition of disability from the New South Wales Disability Inclusion Act, which talks about the social model of disability and disability being, people who experience barriers due to the society and environment in which we live. So if there's anything you want to sort of check, please feel free to get in touch. But it is a self-determination kind of situation where it's about how you personally choose to identify, and if you do identify as a person with disability or a disabled person, then absolutely this program is for you. Now I can see in the chat as well, I've got a question here around when we say other organisation, Could it be a private company? I think we're really open to what those other organisations could be. We would want them to be either an arts, culture or screen organisation. This is not the internship to, you know, go and work for KPMG or Westpac with. But yeah, we're really open. And again, if that's something you want to double check with me, I think my contact details are in the chat there as well. So really happy to answer any questions one-on-one that any people might have. I don't know that I've got any more questions in the chat. If anyone hasn't had a chance to put one in and you would like to ask a question before we wrap up, now's your moment. And I think we may be done. So just want to say thank you all so much for coming along today. It's been such a pleasure to get to talk about this really wonderful program. It's something that, you know, my colleagues at Create New South Wales all feel really passionate about. It's, you know, it's certainly a program that Arts Minister Don Harwin is really excited about. And I think it does have a real opportunity to make a significant impact in our sectors. So really encourage you to have a look at those guidelines and consider an application. I'm very happy to chat or email anytime with any questions. And just like to invite you to join me in thanking our wonderful panel of speakers that we've had today, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with this program. I wasn't involved last time, so it's great to hear from you about how it all worked, and thank you for your guidance on sort of working through this with us. And really hope to see you all coming along to our next webinar, which is on Thursday the 30th of September at 11 a.m. So you can register for that now, and as I said, we'll be sort of talking more through some of those nuts and bolts in that next webinar. But it's been lovely to be with you all this morning. Thank you again, and I think we will say goodbye to our audience and see you again in a few weeks.